Hi, it's Ileana Kapunik here, and I have Tony Rodrigues with me today. We're doing an interview. Hi, Tony.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
So, Tony was a victim of one of the SSP programs, and he also was drafted in slave labor. He did 20 and back. He has done some interviews with Dr. Michael Sala about his experiences about the 20 and back. As well, Tony is having a website being done to share his interviews and information about himself, so that's coming up soon for Tony. He's also doing a number of other interviews. So, Tony, can you please talk about your beginnings, how you remembered all this stuff, and what happened to you?
Sure. It's hard to pack the whole 20 years into an hour or two of interviewing, or even 5 hours. I have done a few of these, and I'm not trying to seek out a ton of interviews. People ask me questions or ask me to come and talk about it. I'm just saying yes and saying what I remember. What happened was I was 9 years old. I was in a talented and gifted program in my school in southern Michigan, and there was a boy in the class that said that we didn't get along, and he said, "My dad's an Illuminati, and what's your dad do?" And we were boys. I didn't know what that meant, and whatever, I picked on him a little. I wasn't an overt bully, but we didn't get along. We just were both maybe arrogant kids at the time. I was 9 years old, and his dad came in and was the judge for the science fair that year. And when I walked by them in the cafeteria at the science exhibit, he said, "Dad, that's that boy that ruined my confidence. That's the boy I was telling you about." And he said so. They had a weird conversation. I'm like, "We'll take care of that. We'll do something." And I heard him, the son, say, "Well, he doesn't deserve that." And then I just walked on about my business. And then maybe later that night, even, or the next day, it was very soon. A couple days later, I woke up with a gray alien in my face, and three reptilian aliens that walked in at the end of my bed and carried me out of my window. And um, was taken to some laboratory somewhere and worked on, and went through a 20 and back technology, where I was lived on Earth for about 6 years, and went from a couple programs there. I was privately owned by a billionaire who was it's hard to say, but he was a practicing Satanist billionaire, and he was involved with shipping cocaine from South America to America. And then I went into the space program after I was of no service to them anymore, about the age of 16, right in there. They said, if you can't hack it here, you got to go to the military. And that's what happened. And I ended up doing a short service on Mars Colony Corporation, and then on to the Ceres Colony Corporation, where I lived for about 12 years. And was put back the next day. And I woke up the next morning not the same. I was not the same kid. And I went down and had breakfast with my family, and I said, "I can't believe, I feel like I haven't seen you guys in a long time." And I did have that experience of sitting at the table with my family that I hadn't seen in 20 years. But I didn't know why, and I didn't remember it. I always remembered the initial, uh, when they took me, when they put me back, and conversations I had in the laboratory with them. I had always remembered that. I had recalled that, but the 20-year thing didn't make any sense, and I just didn't have those memories. I had weird memories of, standing on a spaceship and flying over the geyser on Ceres at the Okator crater. I always remembered that too. I remembered looking out and seeing the trapezium and other things, walking on Mars in the lighter gravity. But I didn't; those memories didn't make sense. So I convinced myself that had to be dreams, even though they were very accurate, very detailed dreams. If that was the case, color and everything. And about May of 2015, I went in for an MRI. And this may be a coincidence or not, but I went in for an MRI, and about 2 weeks later, I got just huge chunks of memories just hit me, and I would have to pause. There were times I pulled over on the side of the road, and I would just sit, and I would recall literally years at a time, chunks of memory, and I went, "Oh my God, that happened." So I didn't believe it at first, and I went online and I looked. I took to Google Earth, and I found the places I had lived. There was a place near Seattle, which I don't say exactly where because I don't really want to punish anybody with this. There are still people alive that could be affected if I let out a lot of that information. I share it with researchers only. But I did find the people that owned me and the place, and I returned there. I went there, and I knew my way around. I'd never been to Seattle in my life. I went back there after last year's Mount Shasta conference, and I knew my way around. I knew the roads. I went to a beach where there was rocks and things. I knew where the rocks were. I knew my way around. It was freaky. And I found the place in Peru. I was in Peru for a short time. I found that on Google Earth. I haven't visited there. I'd love to, but it's kind of the Wild West from what I've researched into making a trip there. I really have. There are people that want me to go and want to go with me and film it. But from what we understand, it's the Wild West, and it's like a 50-50 shot of having something very bad happen to you.
Oh.
It's a very bad area in the jungles it's out in the river towns of Peru. Anyhow, but I found them, and so they exist, and so those memories were confirmed. And I lived a normal life as documented. I went to school and had a normal life in southern Michigan. So if I remember those memories and I was able to find those places, they're very, very accurate, then I have to trust the space service memories as well. So even though they're kind of far-fetched and hard to believe for a lot of people, but I remember it like I was standing there, and they were a long time ago for me. I was 9. I went out till 29, and then back to 9, and then I'm a 45-year-old man now. So it was a long time ago, and 35, 36 years ago, and so the memories are not crisp and clean. It's not like I was up there yesterday. But I do remember quite a bit. I remember a lot of things.
And do you think it was maybe the MRI magnet that triggered some of these memories? Because MRIs have huge magnetic fields around them to image the brain or other body parts. So how do you think that worked?
Don Piffalo. Me and him sat and talked on Facebook one time, and he found some articles about research they're doing now to block traumatic memories in people. Mm-hmm. This is actually a science that we have here that you don't need to be in space to have, and they've developed it. And what it involves literally is taking a chemical compound that can bond with grab your brain cells that is ferrous, that has a ferrous component, and using magnetic fields to direct it to areas of your brain and block out certain memories. So that's the tech. That's the early tech that has been developed today, by our medical science. And you would think that if that's what they were doing to block out certain memories, to go through a 2 or 3 Tesla MRI machine could disrupt that pretty easy and move those chemicals if those are in your brain. So that's my theory. The only reason I look back, I didn't put 2 and 2 together, the MRI and the memories, until I read the Mars Records accounts, where there was a guy in there that had the same experience. He had an MRI, and then he remembered service on Mars. And so I went, whoa, I remember I had an MRI. And I went online and looked at my medical records, and lo and behold, it was about 2 weeks before my initial recall. After I recalled everything, it was a lot to deal with, and I wanted to speak to somebody. I just wanted to talk to somebody. I didn't want to do any interviews, I just wanted to talk to somebody. And I reached out to a few people. I got a hold of Dr. Michael Sala, and then he researched me and bounced a few things off Corey Good, and then he didn't want to work with me anymore because I had some inaccurate memories. And so then I worked with a few other researchers, Morgan Starr and Rob Hutter, other researchers that went through, and then things that I keep remembering. I still remember things, although very slow. They're not chunky. They're very small memories that come to that, details. But as memories came, and then other things were able to be confirmed, Morgan Starr went back to Dr. Sala, and then they revisited my memories with other things that had surfaced, because I had remembered being on a spaceship that was like a submarine. It resembled a submarine. It had the pressure doors that closed you had to step over a threshold. I remember we always used to trip over it. There was a threshold, they were in the compartments. They were, there'd be long hallways with a couple of those doors, and when we were in a hurry, we'd always tripped on that damn thing. And but this was long before any of the other people came forward and said that submarines were converted to spaceships by the Germans. And so that was one of the things that Dr. Sala kind of hung his hat on with me, and we went on with the interviews. He kind of talked me into it. He said, now's a good time to help out with the whole movement of telling everybody what's going on. And so I agreed to the interviews. I really wasn't out to do that. Like I said, I just wanted therapy. And the other thing is from the interviews is I've met a lot of people that don't remember as much as me, but remember something strange happening to them. And when you research a lot of these people, I'm by de facto a researcher. When you research people's stories, there's always one or two things that are very familiar. There's the same kind of denominators that keep popping up. The age group, what happens, the family members are involved in weird stuff. There's the same common denominators that people have, and then they remember things that are completely fantastic. I hear on a weekly basis, 2 or 3 times a week, people tell me things that I literally have a hard time believing. But once you open the door to a secret space program that travels to play other places in the galaxy and other planets and deal with AETs from all over with all kinds of exotic tech, it's really hard to tell people that, boy, that doesn't sound right. It's really hard to be skeptical at that point. So I want to hear everybody's story, and I think everybody has their own little mission to remember what they're doing, and we all have a piece of the puzzle here, because one thing is very for sure, very certain, is that we've had it all hidden from us. With what we see out here with our cars and our cell phones and things, this is primitive. We're living like cavemen compared to these ETs, and there's a lot that goes on that we are not privy to. And the evidence of this from just the people I work with, you can go out in the field, you go to Dr. Sal's your website, the evidence is overwhelming. Even if most of it is wrong, there's still plenty of evidence. Do you know what I mean? Seriously, if we took 7/8 of the UFO evidence and threw it out as garbage, there's still a ton of evidence. There's still a Library of Congress worth of evidence. So,
Oh yeah, and I've worked in libraries, and I'm a researcher myself. That's my job. I work for a university library, so I do research, and I've been in the research field for about 11 years. And I was in a secret space program. Some people said I was a fake and tried to out me, but I said, no, I have my memories. It happened to me. And I didn't remove my work from the internet. I was asked to, but I said, no, this happened to me. I'm sorry. It happened to me. So I'm not going to remove 2 years of work chronicling what happened to me. So, and I believe you, because it happened to me. I did a 60 and back, and I was on Mars for a long time. I saw some of the atrocities that they've done. They have these labs attached to some of the ICC bases that do transhumanism experiments on people. They take slaves, they take kidnapped people, they take out their soul, put it in an electrical field for storage, then they can transfer that soul into a cybernetic/humanoid spliced body, and you have yourself a soldier or a scout to be traded with 900 other species, or to use in the ICC in whatever manner they want. They can brainwash that soldier, or they could leave parts of their memories. It depends what the project is, what the mission is, what the parameters are, and you have yourself a working force. So that's my memories.
programmable, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I remember people hanging off of hooks with blood running down their back. They're just hanging there until they're prepped for the cybernetic splicing. There's blood dripping off that person, and they're just hanging there or screaming on a hook.
My experience out there was that I was treated like a piece of equipment. I was maintained. I had a schedule of, this, you go today, every so often you get your hair cut, you have to eat at this time, this time, this time. You can go to the bathroom now, that's it. And I was a piece of equipment. I was well taken care of, but that was about it. I had the same value as a refrigerator to them or anything else. They there was no empathy. These are programs that are beyond, I guess, human rights. They're not answering to any of that. And you have to question if they're even being run by humans, because you got to think, if your government or whoever is in charge of you treats you inhumanely, are they a human? And as I wondered that myself. But yeah, the consciousness transference tech hasn't been talked about. I'm curious. Corey Good has never touched it, but I know it's there, and other researchers know it's there too. There have been plenty of researchers I've talked to that are fully aware that when they clone somebody, the clone is a vegetable, and it's not. It's just a moron, and so they take parts of your conscious. There's consciousness transference tech that goes into cloning. It's hand in hand, and they can take you out of your body. They can take me out of my body and put me in your body, and I would be stuck in your body. And they can do it vice versa. That tech is real, and it's something that they're using out there without any kind of supervision, without the adults watching. So there's a lot going on under that we're not aware of. And the thing is, what I'm saying and what you're saying, you shouldn't take your site down, your 2 years of research. Yeah. And even if it was 100% not real, you still should add it. There still should be information. There still should be a library to draw off of for the future. So the things that I'm saying, hey, it was 35 years ago for me. I might not remember everything perfectly. I might not remember exactly what the door looked like to pull into the LOC. I don't, it was a long time ago. And frankly, during that time, I could care less what the walls looked like. I kind of had my own problems to go through. So, but that doesn't mean that we should throw the baby. This is a completely secret thing they're trying to sweep under the rug. So every bit of evidence, every bit of research should be presented, should be accessible to the people that need it. And in the future, when they have a post-disclosure and somebody tries to really spin it and come up with lies, they're going to need people like us to go back and have an archive to reference and say, well, wait a minute, you said that wasn't there, and these people said that it was. So it's important what we're doing right now for history, for not today, but for years down the road in a post-disclosure world.
And that's how I look at it as well. It's a living memory archive that is left behind. It's left behind on YouTube. It's left behind on my website. It's people will look at it and say, oh yeah, those guys had something that happened to them, because look, this has been disclosed now. I might be dead when this is disclosed. Who knows when it'll come out? Doesn't matter really. It's just history.
It could be very soon. I would love it to be. I would love how they say to rip the Band-Aid off. I would love that, and just everybody has to deal with it. You have to deal with it. People are going to get more spiritual. People are going to get more healthy, and people are going to be more concerned about other people, I think, once they find out that we are not alone and what really is going on. But it just doesn't make sense to me. When you look back at history, if you reference history, it doesn't seem like they're going to be completely honest when it happens. That somebody's going to try to maintain power, and there's going to be a lot of lying happening, and they're going to try to slow it down and steer it how they want. And I'm a firm believer that everything will be okay, everything will be fine eventually. But I'm still want to have what I remember in the record, and people like you, what you remember in the record, so that people can go back and when something kind of doesn't add up and they want to call BS, they should have some sort of history to go back and look at. And hopefully they don't bury it like they say and make not only your channel but 5,000 other Ileana channels around you. You know what I mean? So that's hard to find. I know that's a strategy they do, and but we'll see. I think that a lot of the people that are covering things up have their hands full with other things right now. So that's why there's been a lot of people in the disclosure community coming forward and getting away, whereas back 20 years ago, people were silenced. There was no YouTube channel. People legitimately got silenced and murdered.
And the thing is, some of these SSP groups run psychops programs, so the more people that talk about the stuff being in the SSP, the better for them, because hey, this is all dreams, fantasy, sci-fi, you're making stuff up. That's why it's allowed to be on YouTube, because it's a dream in a fantasy world. You can talk about your experiences. We have the New Age communities, we have the SSP communities, we have the Super Soldier communities. All of it is out on the internet. They're talking about Pedogate, they're talking about Antarctica. It's all over YouTube. It's the next best thing other than TV. YouTube is the new platform. FB is the new platform. Social media is exploding with this stuff. There's hundreds of videos on Antarctica and what's going on in Antarctica. It's like, it's right there for you to see. They can't take it away. The thing is, they can't mess with that. Because it's a cover. It's a cover. Oh yeah, you can talk all about it. No worries. People won't believe you probably, and that's the cover. People won't believe you until history is
Oh yeah,
disclosed.
right, right. Um, we'll see though. Hopefully something happens very soon in the next few years, and we get something along those lines. And it would be nice. It would be nice if there were access to data from out there. If they came and gave us the adult version of what's going on and said, look, we've had a program going on, and this is what's going on, and they brought everybody up to speed with where we're at. That would be wonderful. It would be a golden age because everybody all of a sudden would go back and have so much more to learn all
Yeah,
at once. We would all have so much to learn, and about ourselves, about how the universe really works, and life, why we're here. Everybody has a lot to learn as far as that because there've been so many educated guesses at all those subjects because the real proof, the real tangible stuff that mattered was hidden and used by a small group of people so that they could stay in control.
exactly. Because they have different black vaults and vaults of knowledge and information just stockpiled. One in Antarctica. Every state in New York has one. There's 52 different vaults with technology stockpiled. Everything that's been taken away, like the free energy, they stockpile that in some vault that's heavily shielded and protected. They have thousands of books that are, from the Vatican Library, other libraries, Library of Alexandria. It's all there, stockpiled in some underground vault, or off planet somewhere, stashed on a moon or elsewhere, or stashed on a ship in a secretly encrypted database that could be accessed at any time remotely, on a ship, on a planet, on a moon. That's how the SSP, they have their gridded information in libraries and databases. It's all electronically been copied and put on the glass pads, been put on crystal storage devices, these mini supercomputers. So it's everywhere. It's just stashed. We don't have access to that right now.
Yeah, it's funny to see when you think about when computers started, and they were not received well by everybody. You were kind of a nerd, and then they got advanced, and now everybody's got a computer,
Mm-hmm.
or at least a phone that is your phone is a computer, whether you like it or not. And it just to see how it proliferated. I think that a lot of the work, when they say that disclosure is going to happen, and it's going to be people aren't going to be able to handle it. There's going to be riots and death and all that. I think it's not going to be that bad. Even if it was overnight, I think that people can handle it, and I think that people would take to it well because it's the truth. And I
Exactly.
think I think people will take to a just post-disclosure society like a fish to water. I think that everybody will fit right in and go, "Why didn't you just say so sooner?" Honestly, I think it's going to be something like that. Why didn't you just tell us in the first place? Is
Yeah.
pretty much what especially the kids, especially younger people that are learning quick anyway. They're going to be, "Why'd you even bother lying about it?" Geez, you know. So we'll see.
Exactly. And they have so much healing technology. They have these medical pods. It was recently in the movies Passenger. It was in Prometheus. Randy Kramer talked about building these medical pods. He's doing the research for it and trying to build one of these things.
Holographic regeneration tech. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, he's
and
going far with it too. I'd like to see where he's at nowadays. I wish him the best. I think that's better to just take the bull by the horn and do it yourself. And he's got enough memory to do that, obviously. So, hope that comes out, and that'll be regardless of any kind of disclosure. I talked to a group. I did an interview yesterday, and I said, there's a crack in the dam. There's a big dam that's been built up, and there's a crack in it, and people need to keep poking at it. Don't take my word for it. Don't take your word for it. Keep researching. Keep learning. A lot of people that are going to watch this video have been involved and don't remember it.
yeah,
People that were involved that had blank slated. There's a curiosity. Like when you went through it and you don't remember it, it seems like those people are drawn to the subject and research it. They're trying to figure something out, and they have zero memories, zero, not a hunch. Not like I did it with it, where I told myself it was dreams. I'm a very small percentage of people that remember what I do, and I think there's a lot of people. I think it's not the tens of thousands. I think it's in the millions of people that have been out there and back and don't know. And so there's a lot of people like that. There's a crack in that dam. And I think those people that are researching, people that are watching this, just keep researching. Don't take what I say as verbatim. Don't take what you say as verbatim. Don't take what anybody says. And take a little bit of everything. It's just like researching a religion. They've all got some truth and they've all got some BS. Not that I'm calling BS on myself, but I only have one small perspective of a big giant subject. So
Yeah.
people need to keep it in context with that. What I say is just a small one piece of a giant puzzle. Put that puzzle together. Everybody's on it right now.
And what do you remember being on the Mars basis? Because you said you had been in Aries Prime. It's a funny question to ask people, but I always ask the experiencers in the SSP, what did the bathrooms look like? To me, that's one of my
The
favorite subjects.
the Aries Prime bathroom was super high tech, and we missed it when I missed it when I went to Ceres. I thought the Ceres colony was going to have a bathroom the same, and they didn't. The Aries bathrooms were super high tech, and even though I was in a small, I had my own room there. And it was a small room. It was like 100 square feet, but it had a bathroom, and it was nice. It was pretty. It was what's the word? Paperless.
Ah, so how does that work?
It was water. They had running water, and then it was a paperless thing. So it was a different, bathroom. It was a high tech toilet seat. So
So
I don't
basic,
remember a whole lot about it, but here's what I remember. We missed it when we left. And boy, the bathroom there, and we talked about it. We joked about it and stuff like, boy, these bathrooms suck. After we left and went to Ceres.
so was it like where something kind of spritzer comes out, you do your business, it spritzes your front, your back, and then
Right. And so these are things that I don't remember very clearly. It was like a day-to-day grind. I tend to remember my clearest memories that came back are the emotional stuff. The day-to-day grind, I don't have a lot of memory, but I do remember missing it when we left. Because they were advanced. The bathroom situation on Mars, on in the Aries Prime, not on the forward base I was. The forward base I was pretty Spartan, and it looked almost like an elementary school kind of, like a build, and with the furniture and everything, it looked like almost what you would expect in a school cafeteria. Everything was color coded there. That was at a smaller forward base on Mars. That it was built for about 150 people, and there was only 30 or 40 people there when I was there. It had been closed because maybe it was in a dangerous area. I don't know what the history. I don't know the history about it, but it was undermanned, and so they had set us up in office cubicles where we were staying. We didn't stay in our own quarters. We had one office cubicle where there was a dozen guys, slaves like me, that were staying, and we shared one bathroom, and it was like a standard bathroom in America.
yeah, I remember being on one of the military Mars bases as well, and their bathrooms were exactly like you described. They were smart bathrooms, smart toilets. Basically, you went in, you did your business, right? There's no toilet paper because that's a waste on Mars, and water is conserved. So basically, a spritzer comes out from the toilet. You finished your business, it spritzes your backside, it spritzes your front side, then there's some whooshing air, it dries you up, you stand up, then sensors clean the bathroom, and it's done. And it has a warm toilet. You can also program it to listen to music, so it's a smart toilet on the better bases, and the others did have toilet paper, the ones that are not so well, maintained.
My entire time for the Mars Colony Corp was only about 6 months. I
Mm-hmm.
was there full time, and when I was on Aries Prime, I was testing for about a month, maybe. It was just a few weeks. The time frames are hard to pin down. Again, that was something I wasn't paying attention to when I was living it, but I was there being tested and trained to do ship repair, and for another job. They tested me to see what job I could fit into, and then they gave me some training for the job, and then I was shipped off to the Ceres colony, which was a whole nother animal in itself. It was a German breakaway group that the Germans had found an existing base there that some ETs had built long ago, and they moved into it and began converting it to fit humans, us.
And Were you ever told don't interact with any other ET species? Don't, no
Oh,
physical
I was
contact.
not to say a word to any ET species while I was out. Only about the last 2 years was I able to travel on the base, which is not one base. It's a series of many bases under the surface of the whole planet. There are little shopping mall sized bases and even giant ones that are in caverns, and they were connected by train. And when I was finally able, the Ceres colony, the Germans, even if you're a slave, you still have the ability to work up a ladder. And there was always motivation to work harder and do your job good because there was reward. And so I eventually got to the point where I had a small paycheck and could travel. Had a small amount of freedom. I still had a correction collar I had to wear. Um, but when I got out, I was under orders to not interact with ETs. Period.
Yeah, when I was on the Mars bases, I was told you are not to have any type of physical interaction, like intercourse with ETs. You're not to interbreed because that disrupts the whole flow of whatever job you're doing, whatever mission you're part of. And don't even interact with your human coworkers
Hmm.
on the base. No interrelations, nothing. You concentrate on your job, what you're doing, and you stick to it. You don't have any emotional interaction with your coworkers.
They, I think it was frowned upon for your immediate coworkers on the ship to have relationships, adult, you know.
Yeah.
But sex was encouraged. They said that if you could have sex, you should. People that did were more productive, and they encouraged it. They encouraged sex, both heterosexual and homosexual. They said if you can, you should. You should have a sex life. So and that was the Germans. And I think that was just strictly from a point of production. Everything that they did was about production. There was a carrot and a stick, and there was always a progress officer. Everything you did was marked and checked, and they had a score for you at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and at the end of the year for where you were and what kind of production they should expect from each individual. So they had it down to a science. How they were getting their slaves and their own workers to be productive. So
That's not surprising. And I believe everything is monitored and recorded on the ships and the bases. No matter where you go, it's all recorded. So they have it somewhere in a database of your profile. Somewhere they could always look.
on one occasion, I was called to the bridge, and this was a reward for doing good. But I was called to the bridge, and I was able to sit on the bridge of the ship, and it's Star Trek like. There were a lot of people with things on their heads, and they could take them off and hang them on the chair behind them, and there was a curved screen in front of them as a backup, or they could see what was on the screen when they had those things on their head, but I couldn't see anything. And there was probably 12 people like that in front of the captain, who was on a taller chair with a main viewer, and he didn't have anything on his head, and he was in charge of everything. But he could call up everything. He said, "Come on in, you did good," and he asked me to bring him a report specifically. And when I didn't want to stick around there, I felt like I should have been back to work. I was scared. I thought something bad was going to happen to me. But he said, "Here, have a look. Just sit down right here. We're landing." And that's how the other reason I know where we were on Ceres. But he showed me my workstation. He said, "Check this out. This is you," and it showed me my workstation. It was a camera view of me, a security camera of where I would be working. And I was like, wow, you guys can see me? I had no idea at the time that there was a camera there. And then he showed me other stuff. They showed me outside the ship. They were goofing around, doing flips with the ship. He said, that's enough messing around, get back to the pyramid base. And the ship immediately, the screen went. And we were looking at the Auhana Mons, and we flew in from around it and then down into that crater and did a circle and waited for the doors to open to let us in. And then inside one of the craters, in the big crater next to the Auhana Mons, inside there's a crater that doesn't get sunlight in it. I think only a couple hours a year, very rarely does it get sunlight. It's a cold trap. And inside there were two giant doors that opened up. They had a hologram over them, and it disappeared. And they had 6 lights across the top, and they opened up sideways, and we went in. And it was a huge underground network of hangar base for giant ships. We passed other ships. But when I went back to my station,
Hmm.
I told the guys that I work with, I said, they got a camera right here. And we looked, and I couldn't find it. There was some pipes there and there was a light there. And we couldn't see anything that looked like any kind of physical. There was no little dot. There was nothing. And I said, it's got to be right here. And I spent 2 or 3 days there. I'd come back to work the next day and go, no, there's a camera there. And I couldn't see any kind of camera device at all. So that kind of tech they have too is very effective. And, I saw both of those things.
And from your experience, are most of the bases underground or some of the bases on the
Everything was
surface?
underground. There were a few stations of equipment that were on top of the exterior of the planetoid. There were a few small, looked like weather stations, which is what they were, like a security thing. But everything's underground. They were all in giant caverns. I mean, giant caverns, some miles long, and they were hollowed out, and they you could tell they were made artificially. A lot of them. There were a few natural ones, but most of the time they were artificial. And then the Germans had went in and built buildings like human buildings out of concrete. They had a lot of them had columns in front of them, and they were just buildings, and with a street in the middle, a small street. They didn't have cars. They had little six-wheeled electrical carts there was a police and the ambulance. It was a little six-wheeled electrical vehicle that came up and down the street. You weren't allowed. You could walk across the street, but you weren't allowed to stand in it. There was a lane, and that was strictly for that kind of personnel, for the police and the whatever, if they had fire people. Um, and then on the side there were sidewalks, and so it wasn't very wide. And let's see, there were shopping areas, there were industrial areas, and there were a lot of areas that were under construction that looked like a military base where it wasn't fancy. For many, you'd get off the train and there wouldn't be any much there. It'd be not fancy, and then there were places you got off the train and there were women and children, and it looked like a mall, looked like a shopping mall that you were inside with a fake sky, with a digital fake sky, kind of like that thing in Vegas.
And that's on Ceres?
Uh-huh.
And on the Mars, are some of the bases on the surface on Mars, or is it all underground as well?
The one that when I got off the transport to Ares Prime, we went into a giant dome, and at the top of the dome, you could see out there was sand. It was maybe a circle of it, maybe 20 feet around, where there was sand blowing, but it looked like it was covered up with dirt, and some of it blew off the top, and there was sunlight coming in, and it looked like a hotel entrance way. There were palm trees, there was a water fountain, there was carpet. They had tile, like stone tile, slate tile floor with carpet rows to walk in. There were benches and places to sit with tables. It looked just like a hotel. And he walked me over. There was an officer, and he walked at me and three other guys, I think, walked us over and told us to sit down. He checked us in with a lady at a window who was a employee for that area, and they had us wait there. We waited there about 30 minutes, and he left. He said, "You guys don't move, just stay right here." And he left, and then another officer came out and led us down to our rooms, and we were in a testing area. We were in a small little area, so I didn't really go out and see the rest of the city or anything. That was the nicest thing that I had seen there. The rest of it was just like hallways, like an office building area where I was. We had our room, and you walk down the hallway. It was kind of like a school, and from there went straight to Ceres. It was that train that portals. You got on a train, and then the train went to speed, and there was a poof, and a minute later it stopped. The train stopped, and we were on Ceres Colony. I got out, and it was full military. There were hundreds of soldiers lined up, and they lined us up and made us give a what do you call it? They made us read a paper with a pledge in German. He said to read it in German as best you can, and salute the flag when you did. And it was that one. And they made the slaves salute a different flag than what the soldiers did. The soldiers had the swastika with the eagle, and we had an eagle with a chain around the world. Was what we had to salute, something like that. And they led us to our quarters, and then I lived in a big, like a prison area, with lots of rows of rooms with no door on them, like a 5x10, and it had a cot and a little, not a dresser, but a little like one drawer thing coming out of the wall, but next to the cot. And then they turned on the light for you. They said, "You got 5 minutes to get in there and get to bed, and the light's going to shut off." And then in the morning, a giant buzzer went on. All the lights came on. We all had to get up and shower and get our clothes. We had like a pajama, and then we went outside and they had our clothes waiting, hanging on a hook, and you put that on, hang your pajama, and it would get cleaned. And that was the extent of my possessions during that time. And then I'd get on a train and go to work. And I went on the miners went on a train to the mines, but filthy. The trains were gross. And then I went on a train that was pretty filthy, but to the hangar. And there's a slave umbilical where you went in and it was all slaves going in the back of the ship, like an umbilical. You walked down and you were in. And later on in my career, I went to mission briefings, so I got to go into the front umbilical and exit on the front umbilical to go get paid. And that was cool because I hung out with enlisted personnel. I hung out with people that weren't slaves. And so that was kind of neat. I got to listen to their conversations and things, even though it was scary because they could put me in trouble. They could make me in trouble anytime. But that was like a source of gossip news for me, and I got to meet those people. So that was cool. But that's kind of basically what it was, and it was Groundhog Day. It was the same thing every day. We were gone, and we came back in different times. But the ship didn't have to. The ship could travel time, so we could go out and do a 16-hour day, and we'd get back a couple hours later sometimes to Ceres, and I had all day to go and do whatever I wanted. So it was kind of like that kind of experience. The ship, depending on where it went, it would come back in time pretty close to when it left.
So it must have
Yeah,
quantum drives on it,
yeah,
temporal
it
quantum
jumped.
drives.
So we were instantly there. When we left the solar system, we were there, and when we came back, there was a mistake sometime once where the navigation officer or the pilot screwed up, and we got back before we were supposed to. And so he said, "You can thank him." They embarrassed him over. They came over the comm and said, "You can thank so and so for messing up. So we're gonna have to wait for 4 hours before we can go back." And so we were all like, wow, it was a long day, and we had to sit there and do nothing for 4 hours or how X amount of time until we could go back.
So do you
That
think there's like
happened.
slipstream time zones that you have to specifically go at specific time, or
No, it was a 9 to 5 schedule day. We got up, we got on the ship. There was a mission briefing. We had an hour to get back and get our act together, and then the ship took off, and we went and did our mission. And most of the time, we were just picking up cargo and dropping it off, and we'd made 3 or 4 drops a day to different destinations. Sometimes they were inside the solar system, which we didn't jump. We flew from A to B in the solar system. We didn't jump from one end to the other. And when we left the solar system, we jumped immediately, and then we flew around wherever we were. And we always had an invitation. I guess they had to register it with some. There's a base around Jupiter where they registered where they were going. So there was always an invitation. They were always waiting for us. We didn't just cold call ET civilizations very often. And we were just trading. We traded boxes and boxes of this for boxes and boxes of that. And that's basically was my job. That's what I did. I measured the boxes, I weighed them, I put all those things in, and they got scanned. So I was like double checking. There were machines that did it, but I did it also by manual to double check it, and then I generated the report on how to stack it, and the report on how much room we had and how much weight it was. And I gave that to the bridge guys the next morning. I said, they would ask me how much room can we put in your bay, and I had the figures. I had a report. I had a little clipboard with paper. And that's that's what I was good for.
so you were basically like on a carrier ship,
Yeah, like a freighter. Yep.
freighter? Yeah, that sounds pretty common. That's how they do it. And there's different classes of freighter ships and cargo ships and carriers. There's war class, there's, trading class, there's all kinds of type, right?
I didn't initially remember any weapons on the ship. I wasn't allowed to go into basically the middle and the upper decks of the ship. I only straight to the bridge and straight back to my area, which was the bottom 3 decks to the rear of the ship was where my area was. So I wasn't allowed to go and see most of it, but I do remember riding in an elevator in the front of the ship one time with some guys that were talking about blowing stuff up. So if we had weapons, I think they had and I asked them I said, "Will you tell me what are you guys doing?" And they wouldn't tell me. You don't need to know. You don't worry about it. They had a shiny black. They wore shiny black uniforms, and I had a light gray one. The cargo guys down in the bay under me had a dark gray uniform, and the command guys had a navy blue, like a blue uniform. So everybody had their sections that they were doing, and the guys in the, like me in the back were need to know basis. You didn't need to know nothing, so they didn't tell us much. You know, they only told me what I needed to do. Basically, how much room do we have in your bay? How much room do you think you have in the other bay? And how long can you unload it? How long is it going to take you to get it unloaded? And that was my job. I did that for only about 2 years, but it was about a 2 year stint of being cargo in the cargo on that ship.
And when you went on missions to different planets for trading, were you allowed to carry a sidearm for
Me,
protection?
they sometimes they did, most of the time they didn't. They didn't. They like I said, everything was prearranged. You know, we were guests
Hmm.
when they went places. I only went down. I did two I guess you would call them away missions where I got to ride and go twice and leave the ship on another planet. And that was again because I was productive. I was doing good. And there was another guy. There were two of me on the ship. I was in charge of. There were 5 bays. There were 2 bays along the side that I was in charge of, and 2 bays on the other side. And then there was a main cargo bay in the middle, a long, big one. And they could all open up into one big bay. But there was another guy like me that we were. They would always put at least two of you. If there was one guy that was a janitor, they would invent another janitor so that they could compete against each other and race for more productivity. So the other guy, we went back and forth. He'd beat me, and then I'd beat him. And then what I found was that he drew the line. He said, "I'm not going to eat my lunch." He said, "I'm going to enjoy my food." He was a slow eater. He said, "I'm not going to wolf my food down for this." He's like, he said, "I draw the line right there," and that's what I did. Was I wolfed my food down as fast as I could so I could get back to work, and then I beat him consecutively in the production reports, and so then I got to go and go on the away missions. I got to go to the bridge, and I got the little perks because of that. And I still do. And I came back the next day when I was a kid back in Michigan with that habit of slamming my food very fast. And I still do. I still am a very fast eater because of that. Because of those 2 years in that competition with that guy. So that's kind of like a weird idiosyncrasy that happens. And oddly enough, a lot of people have weird idiosyncrasies from that have been that believe they have been in space programs and come back. I talk to them and ask them, so what do you do? What do you do? Any kind of weird stuff? And people do have strange things like that. Those habits stay with you, even though the memories are those. You still pick up habits out there, and then you come back and you have this weird habit you don't know why, and that's a consequence of this technology.
Have you found that you're drawn to similar jobs here on the planet on Earth that you did up there in the program?
I think I'm good at my job because of that because I had to be accurate with the numbers that I entered in. I had to generate and I had to be really accurate. And I think I'm good at what I do now because of that. And I think I have like a weird, like a sense of being double checking everything.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I double check stuff. So, but as a result, like I always had this thing in my head I couldn't join the military. And there was times I wanted to, and I thought, nope, it just ain't for me. I'm not going to do the military again, even though I never did it once. But maybe that was something programmed in. I don't know, and I don't know. I don't see myself. I think I worked a FedEx job once for a couple months. I tried to work at FedEx and I couldn't stand it. I'm moving boxes around and I got out of there. I don't even think I made it a couple weeks to be honest. I think it was like a week or two and I quit. So maybe I'm repulsed from jobs like that I did.
And because I never had the urge to join the military as well, but one of my habits is collecting firearms and swords and battle axes, and they made me train with that kind of stuff in the program on some of the Mars bases. Always had a fascination with rifles, with semi-automatics, sidearms. Uh,
Well, I wouldn't guessed it by looking at you, but okay.
well, I passed my firearms license without knowing what the heck I was doing. I didn't study for the test. How to take apart the weapon, put it back together, all of the logistics of safety and stuff. Had On the test I passed with 92.5 out of 100. So, and I didn't study. I sat there bored in the class when they were going over the material, how to use the guns, what's the history of the guns, safety, all of that stuff, taking it apart, putting it back together. I'm like, I'm falling asleep here, so I didn't even study
Might
the
have had some
material.
history, they might have had some history of something that stayed with you that you just
Yeah.
weren't sure about, weren't aware of.
Yeah, it's a habit of collecting these things. I went out to the range and I fired them. I have no desire to fire anything, just to collect it.
Hmm.
It's weird. I like how it looks. I like the curves of it. Special guns and rifles look very militaristic and science fiction like. I like those ones, and I have a particular habit of collecting certain things that look a certain way in terms of weapons. So it has to do with design and quality of it. I think that's one of the habits from the SSB, from working with various weapons. I remember working with plasma weaponry that shoots plasma rays out of the weapon. And you remember railguns, right?
Rail guns, yeah, rail gun tech. We had a small one. When we went out on our missions, we had a small. It was a square barreled one, and at the last probably third of the barrel, you could see inside of it, and there were little contacts that were in there, and it was probably 2 feet long. And then the soldiers we were with had really big ones. They really like long, giant rail guns that they carried, and they had sidearms as well. I didn't have a sidearm. I just had one that was. It was attached to my arm. It was a square tube that went right here, and then when you turned, there was a folding thing that went down in your hand. You could grab down, and that was your trigger. But I could let go of it, and it would fold up, so that I had my hand free to do stuff. And it was a smaller gun, but I guess it was devastating. I only fired it once. We didn't get any training with it. I didn't get any kind of time on the range to shoot and get you. They said, there's your gun. This is how you fire it. That's it. And I went out and we ran into bugs one time. I got one shot off, and I got my arm bit off.
Wow.
So the gun was gone at that point. I took one shot with it. But like I said, the other thing was the soldiers had buoyancy. Their armor weighed them down so that they could run. They could run and jump the same like on Earth. They were just as quick and everything. But my environmental suit that I wore was not armored, and it was light. I was lighter than what I am, so we had a hard time running. When you ran, you ended up getting into like a coordinated jump step. You were galloping for 5 or 6 feet at a time, and there was a step there. And the other guys were better at it than me. I wasn't very good at it. When we all had to haul ass and go, I was in the beginning. I was leading in the beginning, but after we got to the speed where we were jumping, they would pass me up. I got passed up and was left behind, so I just wasn't very good at that. I guess running in lighter gravity.
So do you think the armored suits had some kind of grav or something anti-gravity where they
I
could
think
just...
they just had weight. I think they just had mass to them, so that they worked it out. So if a soldier weighed 180 pounds on Earth, he'd be what 40, 60 pounds or something there. So they added another couple hundred pounds on there, so he weighed 180 pounds on Mars, and they could just run right along. They were just fine. They didn't have any problem with that at all. But once they got inside the gravity-plated hallways, they had gravity plating everywhere. The Ceres colony, by the way, had gravity plating everywhere. All those giant caverns that are miles long had gravity plating floors. It was amazing. That was really the really wonderful thing about the construction there is the artificial gravity plating flooring that they had put in. It was everywhere, and it was millions and millions of square feet. So to me, that was a marvel that they built that. And whenever they were mining into areas, they were getting gravity plating in there quick, so that guys had gravity to work with. They would mine an area and install the plating right behind it. They didn't really want to play around in the microgravity that was Ceres. And there were areas that, like I said, the ETs, I believe they were the pre-Adamite people that are starting to come out. We'll see. They had hair. They looked a lot like the pre-Adamites. They wore better clothes than with that picture, but they had hair. But they were a lot alike. There was the big ones that were 9 feet, ran everything, and the other ones would come and go. The 7-footer ones they would live there and they were traded.
And the elongated heads?
Their heads were like ours. They looked a lot like us in the face,
Mm-hmm.
and then their foreheads would go back, you know, like that.
Mm-hmm.
They had hair. They had hair coming down. They were cool looking. You know, the guys, the 7-footer ones had really straight hair, different colors, and they had really straight hair, and they were 7 foot, 7.5, 8 feet tall. And then the other guys were 9 feet tall, and they were, you know, as far as describing them as a human, they were less good looking. They had really wide, huge hips and really strange proportions to their build. You know, and the reason I mention them is because they tended to stay. They had access to the gravity plane where the gravity would go lower, the plating settings would go lower where they were. So the guy in the club that worked there, that owned it, would only stay in his booth area because there was low gravity there. He didn't want to be in our gravity at all. The big 9-foot guys, they didn't want Earth gravity. They had to be in a lower gravity. So he stayed in a low gravity area. He had a little office that he could see the whole place, and he stayed there. And you know, I don't know how it worked if they went and the low gravity followed them, but I assume that that's what happened. That when they had either some sort of device that would let it know, and low gravity would follow them around, but they didn't do well in the gravity that we did. We're a species that's adapted to our gravity.
Yeah. And did the ships have the gravity plating as well?
Oh yeah, and there was a ladder on the ship. The ship had the two engines, and there were maneuvers that there were certain modes that they put it in. That there were places in the ship that would have a gravity, a little bit less gravity. There was a ladder. There were 2 ladders in the middle of the ship, and I used to go every. I could have took that one, or I could have took the next ladder down to my station, and I would take the one that had. There was a spot in there for only about maybe 5 or 6 feet that had low gravity. So you were climbing down the ladder, and all of a sudden you got lighter. And I used to let go. I used to let go of it and fall into the low gravity, and then grab at the ladder and catch. And it was fun. I'd mess around in there and waste time. I got in trouble for wasting time there. And then in the rear, in the main cargo bay in the back, that I said the big cargo bay, there was an area that kept having cargo scoot, and they couldn't figure out why. And I mean, talking about a big pile of cargo, like 6 by 6 pile, 6 feet wide by 6 feet, and then however tall they stacked it, 10, 12 feet. It would scoot, and sometimes would get damaged. So they couldn't figure out what it was that was doing it. So they repainted the floor with a better paint that was more traction, and then it still did it. And then they put grip tape everywhere down there, and it still did it. And then so they tied it. They tried to they put ties around the cargo, the boxes in that area, and they would get crushed. The ties, so they couldn't figure it out. And then they finally figured out it was a design flaw, and that certain maneuvers, it was like it wasn't going forward, but there was a certain maneuver that they did with the ship when they turned it that caused the gravity field to screw up right just in that area. It was a little ghost in the gravity system there. And so
Fluctuation.
they just had to put stuff there that was more durable, that wasn't breakable, or not put stuff there at all is how they fixed it.
Yeah, from what I remember, all the ships had gravity plating, and sometimes what I remember is gravity plating boots on some of the ships. If you lost gravity for some reason, the boots would lock to the floor and you can walk. That's what I remember on some of the
Yeah, the
ships.
guys, us back in cargo, yeah, we had kind of crappy shoes compared to the military personnel. They got boots, and we had like a canvas shoe that was not comfortable at all. And I remember that. I remember always being jealous of their shoes. I remember looking at everybody when I left in the front umbilical, like I said earlier, and we'd walk out. I remember looking at everybody's shoes and being jealous because mine were just so crappy. Um, but they had access to that stuff in certain areas to slap on boots, and there were suits and things, but
Yeah.
not in my area. You know, it was pretty industrial looking on the bottom of the ship. The upper part of the ship was carpeted and was really looked like an airplane. Looked really nice, and it was spacious. The hallways were wider. And when you got down into the back of the ship, it was skinny. You know, to go through the hallway, so there were plenty of places that I had to stop and go to the side and let people by because they packed it in. You know, in the area that I worked.
Well, your memories are very vivid. Like you can describe what the ship looks like, what you went through. So how much would you say you have memory recall percentage wise?
Yeah, that's hard to say. I'd like to say 50%. There was a good stint of 5 or 6 years that it was like Groundhog Day, where the buzzer went off. I got up. I worked on the ship. I didn't come in contact with another soul except for 3 or 4 other guys that were just like me, and we would clown around. And we were clowns. We would clown around, but and then we'd get the buzzer would come on the ship. There was a light and a buzzer, and we would go look. There were monitors, looked like a McDonald's screen, and it would tell us step by step what to do, who was going to do it, and stop what you're doing now and go do that. And it gave us A, B, C, D of every process we had to do. So if we had to change a fluid in something, it would tell us A, go to the tool crib, get this and this. B, go there and unhook this. It was very mindless. It wasn't a skilled thing at all. So we were told, and that went on for years. It was the same day. It was Groundhog Day for me for years. And then I got off the ship. I had no idea where we were. There was no window. It was the bottom of a submarine. I was downstairs in a submarine. And so that's a lot of memory, though. But I don't. It was basically Groundhog Day. There was really nothing happened. I was a slave. I was a maintenance monkey in a ship, in that system of the ship, and that's how it worked. And then when I was done at the end of the day, I got off, took a train back, you took a shower, and went back in your room, and you sat there until they called you, until the buzzer went off the next day. It was that exciting. It wasn't until later on, those 2 years when I got some freedom, that I really developed a lifestyle that was worth remembering. And the other memories of the Earth service, um, I went through some of the pedogate stuff. I was in that guy was a Satanist. I remember that stuff, unfortunately. But I'd like to say 50, 60% of my memories. There's a lot of stuff that I know I did, like the bathrooms on Mars. I should remember those, right? I should remember brushing my teeth. I don't. I don't remember brushing my teeth. I don't remember. I went to the barber. We had a barber there on Ceres. I don't remember him or what he looked like or getting my hair cut, but I know I remember being ordered to go to the barber, and I remember when I had a girlfriend, she wanted me to get facial hair, and I wasn't allowed to. And I remember asking them, please, can I grow just a little bit? Because some officers did, and they were like, no. There was no facial hair allowed for me. And so I remember stuff like that. I remember conversations of things. But there's a lot of things that I should remember that I don't, just because I didn't give a shit about them. You know what I mean? There were things that I saw that I didn't care about. People asked me about the aliens. I really didn't care about them. I wasn't allowed to talk to them. I mean,
Exactly.
I was never going to be a friend with them, so I just walked by them, ignored them. I'd stand right next to a reptile, and I walked right by them. I was always like fascinated, like wow, I wanted to check them out, but I wasn't allowed to talk to them. So it's just kind of like in one ear out the other. Those are memories that are at the time were not important to me. I was never thinking to myself that I was going to be on YouTube with Ileana describing that stuff. When it was happening. So
Yeah. And how do you
and more coming all the time. I still get things. You think about when you were a kid. You meet somebody from when you were kids, and they go, "Hey, remember that birthday party you went to?" And you go, "Yeah, yeah." See, remember that table you broke? And then the memory happens. You go, "Yes, remember we broke that table? That was hilarious," because you didn't remember that before. So I'm kind of at that point right now. So sometimes when I see new stuff come out, I go, "Oh," and I get a new memory. But uh, for the most part, I just remember the times I was happy, sad, or mad.
and how do you process those memories? Do you like keep a journal, a diary, a video log?
Um, I do. I have a couple folders on the computer of stuff that I keep. I write things down. I'm not really thorough about it at all, but whenever I see an image or something, I have a few things. There's plenty of times I wake up and go, man, did that really happen? And I go through and I go back into my timeline and I read my stuff and I go, there's just so much concrete things of the Earth service, and then there are other things that I called out about series that are coming to light that prove it to me. So I've had skeptics. I haven't had skeptics. I've had trolls on some of the YouTube videos that I've replied to, but some of those guys, it doesn't matter what you say, they're just trying to make you mad. But I
Yeah.
haven't had anybody really engage me yet in a really skeptical manner, other than the researchers I've worked with. Dr. Sala was very skeptical. It was very hard to convince, and so that was good. But I like it when people ask me questions that entertain the thought, like prove it then. Well, if that's the case, then how about this? And so because that makes me think, it makes new things come to the surface. It draws new memories to the surface, and it makes me think. I've worked with some artists on making pictures of what I remember, and that is a really great tool for remembering new things because Mark is one artist I work with, is a great friend of mine, and he'll ask me, well, what color was it? You don't think about that. And you go, well, it was tan. I think, and then in the process of thinking about that, I get more details. So he wants to know about specific details when he's drawing the picture that you don't think about. And then once you get a clearer picture, it also helps me to remember in my mind's eye what it looked like.
Exactly. I'm the same way because sometimes I'll do something on the internet. I remember something and I type key search words of that. This is what I remembered, and I find a picture that looks exactly like it and I save it. And then I do a write up of what the heck I remembered. Like Mars base. And I go specific details. This is the key criteria for the Mars base, and I put that in written format in the search engine, and it pops up with a picture of a Mars base that looks exactly like what's in my memory, and I'm like, save. So I work by picture memory too. I get triggers of, I see something, I'm like, oh, well, that was in my memory somewhere of that experience, so I save it, and I have whole logs of pictures of Mars bases, Venus bases. Like, I save it all to keep for
There's a
later.
lot of media that's really close. You know what I mean? Whether it's on purpose or not. But there's a lot out there that's very close to what it really is looking like out there.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm working on it with guys on to put them out. I don't really have a grand scheme or a grand plan of what I'm going to do here. I just when people ask me to come on an interview, I do it, but I don't have some kind of goal where I'm going to be, making a movie or something like that. I'm just trying to sort it all out. What I went through, this is therapy for me to talk about it, and I know there's a lot more people like me out there, and I'm here for them. You know.
Exactly. Get the story heard, work through it, process it, and, you know, I don't call people fakes, I don't call people liars, and I welcome people to talk about their experiences. I don't go, that's fake, that didn't happen. It happened to me as well, so I'm very open minded. And, like, for example, do you remember what the doors looked like on some of the bases and how did they slide? Like, do you remember any of that?
A lot of them were normal doors. There wasn't a lot of them were normal doors. Where we went, there was a big steel door when I went in, when I passed into where I went to bed. But I had friends, and I was able to visit, and there were like apartments, and they had a normal door with a doorknob. But there were also places. There was a girl I knew that I saw for a short time on Ceres that her apartment was converted out of existing rooms that were there, and her door was a giant slab of stone that was triangle shaped. It was a trapezoid like this, and then went down, and it would slide out of the way. But you could think to it. When I got there, I thought I'm here, and the door would relay to her in her telepathically, somebody's here, and then she could command it. She said there was even a way for it to make me go away. And this was the Germans found these rooms like this and converted it to an apartment, and it was way down deep. Like I had to take a lift, I had to take an elevator, and it was like a half hour long of elevator rides to go down into the interior of the plant where her area was located. And it was a huge slab door. It was like, and the whole room was made out of stone, and it was converted into an apartment. But that was there. That was there. And then there were other ones. When you went up higher, where the caverns were, where they had converted buildings, they were normal people, normal human-looking doors. There was a revolving door from the hangar area was a low oxygen environment. We'd walk and we'd get lightheaded and get headaches. And as soon as you'd walk up, it looked like a city, like a marble city building facade, marble, really ornamented like from the 20s. It was built probably in the 30s or 40s, back then by the Germans, and it was white marble steps. We walked up, and there were revolving doors. And when you went through the door, there was oxygen. I we used to love that. We used to love to walk that and be starved of oxygen, and then walk through that door, and you go, and it was a great feeling. And then that was where the bank was. That's where we got our paycheck.
And
The train window was in there, and then there was another layer of steps, and it looked like a bus station. It was very ornamental, very tiled. It was tiled and marble. It was beautiful. It looked like a place on Earth, like in a city on Earth, and that was there.
did they have electronic money, like credits? You
Yeah.
did.
Well, no, they had facial recognition, so you could put your account and put it on your facial recognition. You could elect to have cash with you, or you could have a like an electronic thing, But I didn't have any equipment. I didn't have my own personal smart glass or like what we would call a cell phone or anything. I didn't have that, so I kept cash on me. I would the officers on my ship said to just carry cash. Don't bother with the facial stuff. Don't do any of that. Something bad will happen to you. Just carry cash and spend cash and keep your cash with you and put it in the bank when you're done. So that's what they did. They had they had bills, and but you could elect to just use the facial recognition software. Go up and press the button that that's what you wanted. Hello, and I want this, and it would see your face and take it out of your account. They
Okay.
had that ability there, but they had many forms of ways to spend money.
Because I know that insiders have said, well, other civilizations, other ET species don't use money. It's like barter and trade, but not with money.
That's what that window was. Now that area, what I described, ETs would come there and they would have to say, I've got this and this that I can trade for money, and they'd say, okay, and they'd give them, here's your $500. How much you got? Give me a half ton of raw whatever it is, and here's $500. There you go. And then they would go into the colony and have money, spending money. But
Hmm.
that was what that window was. It was a trade window at the exit of the hangar area, which was huge, which was gigantic, was miles big, of hangars where ships would pull in, and they had individual stalls that were made out of, there were big stone walls, and it was like a trapezoid ceiling with stone walls, and the ships would pull in there and park. And these were giant ships, 1,000 feet. Some of them were way bigger than that, but 1,000 feet big ship would pull in there, and they would rows of them. And then they had tunnels that went off to the side that were support people, like people that could work on ships, resupply them and stuff. All those crews. There was another, and those were all like a low oxygen area. It was really muggy and hard to breathe in there.
And do you remember your age regression process? What kind of technology you were put in for the age regression
It
itself?
was just like it was. Yeah, I was I remember being put still, and they put like it was like a foam, like a black foam that they put around you, little wall like to hold you still. And I remember getting injections every day. They'd come and give you like all in your legs and everywhere of your whole body. They'd give you the big needles of injections. And it was painful, but you were sedated, so you really couldn't move or anything. And then I remember at the very end, they said, "Okay, you're done." And they pulled me out, and I remember going through. I think it was the time travel tech, and I remember that really painful, effervescent feeling. It was like balls of pain throughout my body. It was effervescence feeling, but it was like like this big of a space of a ball would hurt really bad, and then they just my whole body, and then boom, and I woke up as a kid again back, and I believe I was at the Draco base on the moon because there were windows that I could see out, see the moon surface at night, and I was a kid again. I was back to being 9 years old, and then they continued to work on me, and I got another round of programming for blocks or whatever. And there was a little episode there, and then I woke up in my bed.
Do you remember ever being wheeled into like an MRI machine with a wheel spinning and an electromagnetic field to do the time age regression process?
Not specifically, no, I don't remember it. But honestly, I haven't given any of that much thought. I remember the painful part of it, you know. But that whole process, I was pretty sad to go. I had a relationship that I was leaving, and that life there, and I couldn't at the time. I didn't believe that they were ever going to erase everything that I remembered. I had a life. I had friends. I had lovers. I had career. I had a good. I was established. I had established myself from being a Groundhog Day to actually having an identity, and I didn't want to go. I didn't. I was happy with where I could see that I was going to get. If I would stayed there another 10 years, I would have been promoted to 10 years worth of better stuff. And so I didn't want to go, and I didn't know what I was going back to. I had no memory of my life back where I was going. No one did. None of the slaves did. And so, but I woke up as a kid again, and back in southern Michigan on a farm, in a farmhouse, and went down and had breakfast. I went to school the next day, and when I asked the teacher to go to the bathroom, I didn't remember where the bathroom was, and I'd used the bathroom the day before. So she called my mom and said I had amnesia. She thought something was wrong, but for me, it was just the passage of time in my head, in my mind. I literally forgot where the bathroom was. I said, "Teacher, I got to go to the bathroom." And I literally said this in front of the whole class, but I don't. Where is the bathroom again? And this was in the middle of the school year. This wasn't like the first week. And I'd been to school, I'd been to school my whole life, so it was really weird that I forgot. And I remember that, And I was changed. I wasn't the same person when I went back the next day. I was a completely different person. Like I said, I had different habits, I had different things, and I guess I was a lot less of a butthead, so maybe it worked what he did to me, I was a lot less of a bully to anybody else. I was a lot more humble after what I'd went through. So I don't want to say it was a good thing, but maybe it wasn't a bad thing either. I definitely did some bad things.
Well, I think we all did some stuff that we regret in these programs, because I remember doing quality controls on the cybernetics when they create the cybernetic soldier, human cybernetic. I'd used to check it for quality control to make sure it's good to go. It's good to go out from the lab. Quality control doing that, and man, that's weird remembering that, but that's one of the many jobs they had me do over 60 years, and I did like 14 to 20 different jobs: linguistics, Neuralink implant connections, database encryption, information center work. They put you in wherever you need to be based on your specialty and ability, and in you go to do your job. So it's layers. You're good for this. This is where you go, and this is what you do for the amount of time you need to work there. 14 years, 10 years, then they move you somewhere else. It's based on what you're capable of doing. That's what I remember how it went for me for 60 years. So, and it's regimented. You clock in, you clock out. You have your timestamp card, electronic card. The door opens that way as well, or you have your bracelet on your hand to open doors on the bases. That's how I remember my stuff. And just a bunch of work. For me, it was work, work, work. So,
Right. Yeah, without a paycheck.
it was electronic. It was all electronic. It was based on electronic creds. This is the amount of work you did. This is how much you did of it. So now this is how much time off you have. Electronically, you can have this much time off for just time for yourself.
Wow.
It was based on credits, like
Production.
production. Yes, exactly. This is how much time off you
Sounds
have.
familiar.
This is how much you can get food. This is entertainment. Go watch a holovid movie or something. Go outside in the biodome gardens, take a walk or whatever. It was based on work credit, how much you did work and how well you did it.
That sounds all familiar. That sounds like something they would do. Yeah.
Yeah, so I never saw paper money. It was mostly like, okay, you worked this amount of time. This is how much time off you now have to do whatever you want within the limits of your work parameters, how high up you are and whatever you're doing in work-wise. So, and, clothing as well. It was all based on work credit, how much hours you did and how well you did it in. You could get a nice, you don't like your uniform, you'd like an upgrade. Well, you had to work for it to get it. That was the reward system. And, credit system. If I had enough work credits, I could get something. If I didn't, wait until next time. That's how I remember it. I remember sleeping in, first time I was on a Mars base, I remember bunking with 12 other people in a room. It was just bunk beds. And you had your little square cubicle where you put your stuff, lock it up, and that's it. You didn't have much of anything else, and you had 2 bathrooms on the side. You have your room where you're sleeping with 12 other people, and then 2 other doors for shared bathrooms, and a kitchen that's mess hall where you go to eat your food. Mess hall. That's the first thing I remember, and I didn't like sharing a huge cubicle room with 12 other people because it was men and women. It wasn't segregated. It was both sexes. So you just tough it out and bunk. Huge room with 12 bunks in it. So that's the first memory I've have of being on the bases. And you're assigned to a specific work group with people. You know, if you're scientists, you're in a scientific group. If you're doing information, data entry, something, you're assigned to that group. So it was work groups, specific work groups, and you stuck to your work group. It was all layers. You know what you're supposed to know for that project, but you don't need to know anything else for another project. Don't even ask. It was that kind of a military style, organized work group mentality on some of the Mars bases, and I think it was militaristic basis because it was all compartments. You do this, you stick to that job. Don't ask questions about anything else that doesn't pertain to your business, to what you're doing. And don't sleep with your coworkers, not in the work group that you're in. You can socialize with others, just not in the work group that you're in, because you're sleeping with that team, that group team. They're in the same bunk room together. So that's what I remember. And we had Neuralink implants. If we would misbehave or think about trying to leave Mars, we'd get a electric buzz, and we have blood coming out of our nose and a headache. So that's what the punishment was. And the reward was, if you behave well, you don't get punished. You don't get beaten up, or you don't get a shock from your implants.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the same theology. And you got to think, if they wanted to do that on Earth, people wouldn't allow that. You know what I mean? Like that kind of efficiency, or those systems that would keep people working like that. They would never let the public at large would never allow that. You know what I mean? There would be revolution.
Yeah.
So they're getting away with it out there. So it makes perfect sense that they would not want to tell us. And because human rights violations are just off the charts for what's going on.
Yeah, and even on this planet, in the underground bases, this stuff happens too. Unfortunately, it does happen on this planet as well, in the shadow government.
Yeah, it's happening. You know what I mean? Like with factory workers in third world countries too. You know, the coca to make chocolate. You know, those are little kids being slave labored. So this is something that it's easy to say is horrible. Who would do that? But then history has shown us that it's actually quite common for people to be completely mistreated in the name of profit.
Exactly, and in Hollywood, there's pedogate. Kids are abused in satanic rituals, beaten, raped, mind raped as well, traumatized, and adults as well are being used. You know, if you want to be co-opted by the CIA, they'll put you in an embarrassing sexual position and then blackmail you into being a snitch for the CIA, the FBI, or whatever.
Well, Ileana, I'm running out of time,
Okay.
girl. So I'm going to have to get going soon.
Okay. It's wonderful to chat with you, and it's a very informative interview. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun one. Look forward to watching on your site.
Yeah, I'll post it soon.
Get together, do it again.
Yes.
Get with Daniel, and I'm sure I'll see you again. You're pretty active.
Oh yeah, I try. Right now I'm just relaxing and healing, but I try my best.
Yeah, and I hope you recover soon. I hope you get over what ails you. I'm really sorry to hear about that.
Oh,
Your health is not that
I'm
great.
trying. I'm working on it. So thank you so much, Tony.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you, Elaine. I'm going to go.
Okay, bye, Tony.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Bye.